So I saw It Comes at Night and Wonder Woman today. Since I saw It Comes at Night first, I'll talk about that one first. And letter grade, B plus, 7 out of 10 numerical score for me, personally anyway. Um, uh, First things first, I should say you shouldn't go into this movie expecting a horror film because this movie really isn't a horror film. It's basically just a post apocalyptic thriller. Like, they don't say much about the universe the film is set in, but it's basically just there's this deadly virus, and if you get it, like, you die within a day, but it's really contagious. So, um, like, there's this family who seclude themselves in this house, but for some reason, which I don't get, there's one room in the house that, like, is sealed up that has the virus in it or something. Like, I don't know, because, like, apparently whenever you go in that room, like, you're supposed to have a gas mask on, which I didn't get unless I missed something. And my one of my biggest problems with this movie are the characters, because the characters aren't very well developed in this movie. Like, the mother, for example, has no personality. We learn nothing about her other than she's the mother and she knows how to use a gun, I guess. Um, and even still, like, there's like a couple of scenes where the two fathers talk to each other, just about like random stuff, and I guess that's the closest thing to character development this film gets. And then there's just like little things like dream sequences that aren't really necessary. The only necessary dream sequence is the last one toward the end of the movie, where like he has a dream, he wakes up, something horrible happens, and then he wakes up again. I know that's like a big cliched thing that happens, but in this movie, it's actually really effective and they really made it work. It sounds like I'm saying a lot of bad things about the movie, but don't worry, there are good things like the minimalistic setting uh, does create a very distinct sense of isolation and mystery. Uh, the cinematography at night, even though it's not a horror film, it's shot like a horror film, and because of that, just the cinematography alone, there's just some really creepy sequences. But this movie was not like another movie from A24 Pictures, The Witch, which came out like a year and a half ago, and that movie really left an impression on me. That movie, even though it has its flaws, it just was a really unique take on the horror genre, and it was so unsettling from beginning to end. But It Comes at Night, I don't know, it just didn't quite do it for me this time. But um, like, it has an interesting premise. Uh, some cool stuff happens in it. Um, and the only other complaint I would have about it is not much is really explained about the world it's set in. Like, there are events that are ambiguous and left to the viewer's imagination as to what exactly happened, which is pretty smart, but there are just like details about the universe the film takes place in that, if they were explained more, could have really added to the film. Like, uh, what is this virus? What are the symptoms of it? How uh, long does it take to take effect, and for how long is it contagious? Just like basic stuff like that, like, can be written in, because the dialogue in the movie, they just talk about it in this vague way, and in a real situation like that, people would be saying like, oh, we got you gotta stay in here in this room for the next day, and if nothing happens, then you're fine and you can come out. But if something does happen, like, you gotta understand what's going on, or something like that. And again, just a little more. It doesn't have to be just blatant exposition, but just a little more knowledge about like the characters' backgrounds and their personalities definitely would have helped. Yeah, but it's an effective, suspenseful movie, and it sounds like I'm saying a lot of bad things about it, but um, uh, if the trailer is a little misleading, but if you're looking for a claustrophobic, suspenseful thriller, it's definitely a good one to check out. I will say the ending is a little, it catches you off guard, not in the sense that there's a twist, but it's just kind of an unorthodox ending that you wouldn't really expect it to end there. And I gotta give this movie credit. Spoiler alert. A child is killed. Like, a 4, 5 year old child is shot with a gun and killed in this movie. Like, I I gotta give this movie credit. This movie has balls for including that, because you never see children die in movies, especially like more mainstream movies like this. Um, Unless it's something like not easily accessible. But, anyways, Wonder Woman. So, the DC Cinematic Universe is kinda not good. Um, well, until now. Because I said to myself going into this movie, if this movie is not good, I am just giving up on the DC Cinematic Universe, because Man of Steel, it had its moments, but overall it was kind of a mess. Batman v Superman, it had great individual scenes, but the movie was more concerned with setting up 5 other movies in the process, that it just ended up being this jumbled, cluttered mess. And Suicide Squad was more concerned with setting up like 10 or 11 other movies than telling a coherent story in general. So they've basically gotten a little worse each time, and I'm like, okay, I hear Wonder Woman's getting good reviews, so I'm gonna give it a shot. And if it's bad, I'm never watching a cinematic DC movie ever again. I'm just giving up on the whole franchise. My thoughts on the movie are basically the same as Ralph the Movie Maker's in his review, which are, is this movie good? Not really. Is this movie as bad as Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman? No, of course not. This movie is a competently made, perfectly acceptable film. and it is a step in the right direction for the DC cinematic universe. And I think if they continue on this path, their films will uh, rise in quality, and they'll redeem their reputation. Because I think DC has listened to the criticism, and they've taken notes on what they can do better. They listen to the criticisms about cramming too much stuff into one movie and setting up sequels and throwing in all these cameos. So the big thing this movie has going for it over the other DC movies is focus. This movie just has a straight, normal superhero origin story narrative, nothing more. Just keep it simple. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than Gal Gadot, however you say her name, she sells the character of Wonder Woman like you believe she's Wonder Woman. Her and Chris Pine have really great on-screen chemistry together. The first 15 minutes or so on the Amazon Woman Island are they're a bit exposition heavy, but it's not too long, and it's over pretty quickly, so the plot gets rolling pretty soon. The comic relief secretary, who's Chris Pine's secretary, the kind of pudgy red-haired lady, she's only in like 2 or 3 scenes, and yeah, she doesn't really contribute much. And I'm surprised there aren't more historians who are calling this movie like historically inaccurate and politically really just distasteful, I guess, because just Wonder Woman goes out on the battlefield and she like annihilates all the Germans. And the movie is not drab and colorless like other DC movies. It does have a nice bit of color to it, and you can actually see reds and blues and stuff. And a big complaint I have with the movie is the at the end, where, and basically it's the same as Ralph the Movie Makers, where he's like, they give this speech about how you can't just defeat one person and destroy all the evil in the world. The free will to choose between good and evil resides in all men, and it's up to them personally to make the decision whether or not to use the tools given to them for good or evil. And I'm like, wow, that was actually surprisingly mature and well thought out for a superhero movie like this, a mainstream superhero movie like this. I'm like, good job, Wonder Woman. That was quite insightful. But then 3 minutes later, like, I wasn't counting, but like literally 3 minutes later, they're like, nah, fuck that shit. We're gonna have the big Batman v Superman, Man of Steel style climactic battle where it's the one-on-one and you fly 50 feet through the air and punch the other guy in the face, and the guy flies 150 feet through the air and causes a ton of collateral damage and things blow up, and just and you ruined it. And you know what? Even after defeating the supposed god of war, there's still uh like evil and stuff in the world. So I guess that was for nothing. Unless everybody just became less evil. I don't know. Um, yeah, so that's Wonder Woman. I never gave it a grade. I'd say it's a C plus to a B minus, which is like a 5 or maybe a 6 out of 10. Because out of all the new DC movies I've seen, it's definitely the best one. The biggest thing it has going for it is it's got focus. It doesn't keep jumping around. We stay concentrated on this one character and the people she meets along the way. The last great DC movie I can remember is probably The Dark Knight Rises, and that was 5 years ago already. And from a script storytelling standpoint, that movie is sloppy in places, but just the ambition of the project, its scale, the fact that it's directed by Christopher Nolan, one of the best directors working in Hollywood right now. Just the, just like, just the universe that film created just felt so palpable, and you cared for all the characters, and all the characters were well developed and complex and just like a well-made movie. But yeah, still waiting for another great DC movie. But seeing how they seem to be taking that criticism and bringing their new cinematic universe in the right direction, I think it shouldn't be too long before we get something really groundbreaking from DC. If you asked me about DC like 6 months ago, I would have been like, DC, who cares? All their movies are garbage. But now I see Wonder Woman, and I'm like, this this isn't bad. Like, this has potential. It has its faults, but if the franchise keeps going in this direction and you give the filmmakers more creative freedom to make a good movie and not necessarily what's going to be profitable, as Nostalgia Critic would say, according to the chart, I think it could end up being something special. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say about that.